Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I appreciate you joining me today. What I'm going to discuss today is how to develop a 30, 60, 90-day plan. We will start with what it is, what you should be trying to accomplish, and then at the same time, what past that initial 90 days looks like. This is something that is commonly asked for new or veteran leaders as they are emerging into a new role, whether that's through promotion or being hired. And so with that, let's dive right in. So a 30, 60, 90-day plan is relatively self-explanatory based on its name. So it is, what are you going to accomplish within your first 90 days, broken into three different time frames. So in your first 30 days, and then 31 through 60, and then 61 through 90. And I always like to do a 90 plus as well, just for some basic expectations. And that may or may not be defined from the beginning. That may come defined after the fact. But it's one of those things to where shooting for that post 90-day plan as well can make you look really good, make you look like you're going above and beyond, and really set the tone for the future as well. Now, first things first is developing these plans is going to be a little bit different on internal versus external. So as an internal candidate, meaning you are already at the company, you are already doing something for them, and you are going for a new position, generally going to be a higher position or a leadership type role, then you're going to have a lot more information. So we're going to talk about maybe the differences between that of how you can probably take action sooner in your 30, 60, 90-day plan than if you were an external candidate being hired into a company for the first time. So with that, we'll go into kind of the general structure of what these phases look like. So the first 30 days is actually expected to be very much that learning phase. There's a lot of people that try to jump right into taking action, making difference, and these sorts of things. But a lot of times that's just not practical. You don't have enough historical knowledge or current state of the union knowledge or really an understanding of where the company's at, what got them here, and then how to move things forward. So those first 30 days are very much expected to be the learning phase. And what does that really mean when we say learning phase? Well, what we're trying to do is just get onboarded for your role. That's step one. So if there is any onboarding training, if there's onboarding meet and greets or any of those different components, get through that, do it well, put your best foot forward. Aside from that, it's going to be relationship building, both directly within your chain of command in both vertical directions, so up and down. So if you are a manager, it's going to be your direct reports, and then maybe who your director or VP or C-level or whoever it is that you report to. You're going to go both directions, but then also because generally this is a plan that's asked for from leaders, you're also going to want to build relationships with the other leaders and stakeholders throughout the organization. Obviously, the most important ones are going to be maybe who you partner with the most. So myself, who I have a technology background, I'm more on the traditional IT side, but I might have a lot of interfacing with software developers or QA or those other components. So I'm going to focus on those leaders. But at the same time, it could be just based off of the business. Maybe there's upcoming initiatives where over the next 12 months, we're doing a huge tech stack overhaul that's going to involve our sales and marketing team. Then I'm going to build those relationships first. So you'll get an idea through that onboarding phase and kind of getting an idea of what the upcoming initiatives, projects, et cetera, are that might point out the non-obvious team leaders that you want to really focus on building these relationships with. And aside from that, I mean, if we use other examples, again, if you're maybe going into sales leadership, then you might be working very closely with the marketing side or other sales leaders, these sorts of things. So it's one of those things to where what you want to do is just focus on building those relationships, learning about people, learning what's important, learning about what has worked in the past, didn't work in the past, all of those things. And then when it comes to your team members, this one definitely depends on the flavor of the leader, but I am one that my immediate objectives in those first 30 days are get an idea of where everybody is at skill-wise. Are they happy or unhappy at their job? What has worked for them? What is not working for them? I also like to determine what their motivators are. See if you can figure out people's why behind the scenes, because this will really facilitate you being able to make an impact on the people that are reporting to you much quicker. And also in the long term, when you know what people's incentive structures are and why they are high achieving or what they're shooting for or what their next steps are, then you can reward things appropriately. So that's one of my key, arguably the most important objective for me and my advice, both as a coach and in my IT leadership career, is learning the team members why. So that's the other part of this learning phase is you want to overall build the relationships, both verticals, direct team members, and other leaders as necessary. And I've hinted at this, but I'm going to go ahead and call it out explicitly just so it is known. As I've mentioned, make sure that you are learning what is currently in place, what the current challenges are, what the opportunities are, what has worked, what has not. And this is going to be for yourself, your department, your operations, maybe your predecessor, if this is a backfill position or something of that nature. If it's a brand new position, then you might not have any direct positional information of history. But you really want to get a good state of the union. That's really what the first 30 days is for, is how to learn and absorb all of the information you can to facilitate really your 60 and 90 days, but also well beyond. So diving into the 31 to 60 days. So contributing phase is what this is. So this is where you're really first starting to begin to take some action. So you've built some relationships, you've learned about the processes, you've learned about maybe the different technologies and the things that are going in. So this is where you can now start to build upon that. So in this 60 days, what you're going to do is you're going to begin to leverage this to start solving problems. So people should notice you taking action. And when I say people here, I am meaning your direct vertical chain of command, for lack of a better phrase. So your team members, the people that are reporting to you, they should start to feel your impact, even if in very, very, very minor ways. And at the same time, the people above you, so either your hiring manager, direct manager, whatever, they should start to feel your impact, even if in very, very, very minor ways. And what you also should be doing within this 60 days is setting some short-term goals of different activities that you can begin to make. And this might be things like doing one-on-ones with people or creating roadmaps for people. If you know that there's some upcoming initiatives, then maybe it's getting fully up to speed to be able to make a difference in this project and push this thing forward or overcome this potential roadblock, whatever it might be. So things that you know of or have identified that are very short-term, immediate, relatively universal, but are going to have a small impact. And at the end of the day, the result that we're shooting for in these first 60 days out of these small wins is building credibility for yourself and really establishing yourself as someone who hits the ground running. Now, a key to this is, especially if you are an external hire, so somebody that's brand new into this position, this is going to be hard for you to discover unless you do it in the interview process. So that's really where you want to leverage it. So I have definitely some videos and blog articles that I will link to the general site below of where to access both of those. But you want to ask questions throughout the interview process around what are the immediate goals, initiatives, and projects that this position is intended to accomplish? What are the immediate problems or opportunities that this position is intended to resolve? What have been the challenges with this role historically? How will you measure my success in this role? These types of questions are how you can gather this information in the interview phase and be able to develop this 30, 60, 90-day plan. And that's really the 60 days, is it's just small, incremental, tiny wins over and over and over again throughout that 31 through 60 days so that everybody that's in your direct immediate vicinity of, like I said, your team members and your direct managers or leaders, they're beginning to feel your impact. Then the 61 through 90 days, this is going to be where you're really beginning to truly make an impact. You're possibly making some process changes. You are possibly altering maybe projects or different solutions and providing a level of innovation. Maybe you're also suggesting and laying the groundwork for some very long-term initiatives, so well beyond that 90 days, even into 6 and 12 months. But this is where you're really beginning to showcase yourself on the leadership side as a company player and a company impacting hire. That's what you're really trying to do in this 61 through 90. So in my mind, I look at this as in total that really these 90 days are actually your first impression. And it's one of those things where technically speaking, you have roughly 90 impressions in 90 days, right? Obviously, I'm including weekends and things like that, so maybe not. But you get the general gist of what I'm saying, that every single day is a quote-unquote impression, but the totality of your first 90 days is really going to be what sets the tone as to whether or not you have a nice walking path, you have an uphill battle, or it's a downhill battle for a huge chunk of your longevity at the organization. And I always recommend to just destroy those first 90 days and push everything as much as possible so that it is just a downhill battle, that you build that rapport, you build the credibility and the reliability, and you showcase the company that you want to go above and beyond. You want to innovate. You want to always see what the potential improvements are. And that's what we are trying to do. Now, going to that 90-day plus. So this is where I actually usually keep this one for me, unless I'm an internal hire. If I'm an internal hire, then this is sort of one that I will present at the same time with the 30, 60, 90. So it'll be a 30, 60, 90, and then 90 plus. And this is where you already have an idea of what those long-term initiatives are. But like I mentioned, in that 61 to 90, you should be starting to lay the groundwork or do some research or present ideas for some long-term initiatives. That's what that 90 plus is that you're starting to document these things throughout your first 90 days. So then when it comes time for whether your company does it or not, you should advocate and ask for a 90-day review in your first 90 days and say, hey, here's what I've done. Is this what the expectation was? Here's what I've learned, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Okay, awesome. Now here's what I'm thinking past that. Have we thought about this as a company? Are we thinking about this type of idea? Our competitors are doing this, so maybe we should do something to combat that, so on and so forth. But really presenting those ideas in a way that is either upfront if you're internal or if you're external, have that in your back pocket, that this is what I see past these 90 days. And again, you're continuing to set yourself up for that long-term success and make your credibility, reliability, and overall difficulty of success in the right direction. So with that, we will dive in a little bit deeper into the actual tactics of the plan. So as opposed to just the high level phases of 30 days being learning phase, 60 days being contributing phase, 90 days being executing and innovating, and then 90-day plus is really that long-term vision. Beyond that, what does this actually look like? What format should it be displayed in? How verbose should it be? How detailed should it be? How measurable? All these sorts of things. So we will dive into each of these specifically. So the things that are going to be very, very useful throughout this plan is there's the classic SMART goal criteria. I think that's an incredible framework throughout this whole thing. So I actually had a client recently who came to me and was going into leadership for the first time, was previously in the electrical energy field, was always in the field for their entire career, and they were getting the opportunity to go into leadership for the first time. So what we did is we broke things down into, here was the overall categories. So you have your 30-day, 60-day, 90-day categories. Then there was actions to take. And the actions to take, for instance, as an example, in your first 30 days, could be something along the lines of establishing team trust and relationships through one-on-one meetings. So that's an example action. Another one in the first 30 days might be something around understand and integrate safety practices. So these are just the actions that you are trying to either learn, obtain, build those relationships, those sorts of components. Now, each of those were broken down into what are the specific actions you're going to take. So I mentioned the establishing the relationships. This is going to be through one-on-one meetings. You want to get specific. What is the cadence? So you're going to do one-on-ones every single week with every single team member. Awesome. Then you have your measurements. So how do you measure the success of that? At the end of the day, for the one-on-one, it is simply completing them. So it's a very black or white measurement. When it came to something like the safety practices, right? Again, it is participating and fulfilling the safety training, safety procedures, and implementation that are required from the onboarding perspective. I also like to provide the business impact, team impact, and customer impact if there's a level of those different three. Sometimes you might not have the customer impact because you might not be in a customer-facing role, or your company might not necessarily be in a direct kind of commerce interaction like that. So customer impact is a 50-50 one, but those were kind of what we did for this person's 30, 60, 90-day plan that ultimately led to them getting the job, and through 3 different levels of management. So this person was going for manager, their director, their VP, and their executive all loved this plan and were so happy that he did this. And it's really set him up for success. And so we did this for every single category and action to take, is every set of actions has the defined specific actions, what the measurement of success is, what the business impact is, what the team impact is, and the customer impact from a intended results perspective. Now, most of this is really SMART, just in different phrases. Because for those of you who don't know what a SMART goal is, it is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. So we kind of did it in a opposite or different acronym, if you will, considering the T for time-bound, for instance, is actually the top level category of this 30, 60, 90-day plan. Then we have the actions to take. So now we're getting into the specific. Within the actions, that's where we have the actions that we're going to take and how we measure that. So now we have specific, measure, and we have time. And then the relevance is, to me, the actual business impact, team impact, customer impact. So we gave 3 different ways in which this is relevant. And then achievable is also just being realistic. So this is actually going to circle back to one of the things I said earlier in this video, that you want to balance what is actually doable. Some people want to jump right in and start making game-changing things in their first 30 days. But a lot of times that sets you up for failure because you're presenting ideas that maybe were already present, or you don't have enough background in order to successfully propose an idea. And so then it just makes you look like somebody who is maybe complaining or jumping at the bit to a degree that might even be too aggressive, for lack of a better phrase. So one of the things of a good leader, one of the good measures is honestly a level of patience. Just being able to sit, stay back, and learn, observe, and then turn those learnings and observations into actions and measurables. So that is the first 30 days, but that's an example of how we broke this down. Is really, this plan is going to be a SMART goal concept, just in a very, very different way. Now, another component that depends on where you are at, and if this is a strategy of yours, this is not one that I employ all the time. I will say I do employ this, or I think it's much more expected when you get into higher level leadership. We'll say director plus, is along with the SMART kind of 30, 60, 90-day plan, is to do a SWOT analysis. Now, here's where I'm going to make my first gigantic differentiation between internal and external. So because your first 30, 60, 90 days, you got learning, you got contributing, and then you got actually, impacting and executing and making a difference. I think you could build in the SWOT analysis in those first 90 days. I think that that's very, very plausible. I think that you have a much better chance of actually developing a successful SWOT analysis after the 90 days. So putting this in that 90 plus, unless you are the internal candidate. And in case you guys don't know, SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you're internal, you're already going to know a lot of this. So what each of these means, right? So SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Strengths are what is working well. Weaknesses, what is working not well. Both those are for internal evaluation. Opportunities is what are the external opportunities, for instance, product offerings or market opportunities that are not currently being tapped. And threats are going to be external threats. What are competitors doing? What are the obstacles? What are regulations, etc.? Those are just some high-level examples. So being an internal candidate, you're already going to have this. So I actually think that you could build the SWOT analysis directly into your 30, 60, 90. So you could have an idea of what that already looks like and put in your first 30 days, hey, as in addition to the general relationship building and learning that I'm going to do, I'm going to have a relative SWOT analysis to you by the end of those 30 days. And in 60 days and 90 days, I'm going to revise it. And at the end of the 90 days, we will have a SWOT analysis for you. Some people will tell you this is too short to do a SWOT analysis, and that's completely fine too, especially depending on the size of the organization and the maturity of the organization. So there's a lot of variables at play here. But this is one that, like I said, you can do it. You don't always have to. It's much easier for internal people to include it from the beginning. But external people, I like doing it from the 90 plus day spectrum, is identifying these particular opportunities. So now getting into a little bit of the delivery and format. So this is one where it's going to depend a lot on the culture. So if you're being asked this as a new hire or during the interview process, I would just flat out ask how they want it delivered. Hey, Do you want this in a Word document? Do you want it in a presentation? Do you want it to be more text? Do you want me to just have more of a summary and you and I talk through the specifics? So I think asking those questions so that you are delivering in the correct medium that is going to be appealing to the audience, completely and 100% valid. And simply ask, right? And this also shows that you probably know what you're doing and that you've done this before, because you're going to have some people who are going to want, for instance, this gentleman that I mentioned that I worked with very recently, I gave him all 3 media. We did a visual presentation in PowerPoint for the people who wanted to do that. I gave him a summary document that was just, I believe, a 2-pager, but then we also had a 7-page in-depth document. And it really was just depending on who the audience was. Since he was internal, I'd been with the company a few years, he knew which audience wanted which form for the 30, 60, 90-day plan, but they're all ultimately delivering the exact same message. So you can prepare all of them, or you can ask if you're coming from the external side, or if it's internal, then use the advantage you have of the internal knowledge to present it. Know who the audience is and who's going to be in that room. And that's what you can do. Now, if this is going to be in the interview process and maybe you have some mixed opinions, meaning the audience is a mixed bag, then I would say you try to tailor to them both. The easiest to tailor together is going to be visual plus some form of text, whether that's ultra verbose or summary, right? Because now that tells you how to develop your overall visual slides and presentation or whatever program you're going to use there. But if you have a mixture of verbose and summary, that's the difficult part to accomplish side by side. And so what I would honestly do in that regard is, if this is in the interview process, go ahead and make both documents, print them both out, and give them to everybody. If this is going to be a digital interview, so remote over Teams or Slack or Zoom or something like that, then email it to them about an hour before and say, hey, I just want to email over to you the 30, 60, 90-day plan in these 2 formats or these 3 formats, whatever it might be. This is a way for you to cater to your audience. But it's really one of those things where there is no right or wrong here. Like, that's the thing, is people get caught up in this 30, 60, 90-day plan confusion, thinking it's got to be this exact thing, or thinking that they have to jump in on day one and immediately make an impact. And once you really know and understand that it is expected that you're going to have ramp up time, it's expected you're going to have learning, it's expected you're going to have questions. Usually people get a lot less stressed out about developing these plans, especially as an external candidate, when you know that first 30 days is learning, second 30 days is contributing, final 30 days is executing and innovating, and beyond that is really truly making your impact. And so I think the last thing to address with how to go about these plans is a little bit more in detail for the internal and external concepts. So the internal candidate, you can do more than learning in your first 30 days. So I will give you a great example. So I'll actually use myself as an example. The first time that I was brought into leadership by title at an organization, I built a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and I definitely had some business and stakeholder relationships to build that I hadn't built in my current role. Mostly with our clients, that was where I had the relationship building to do, less internally to my organization. So I focused on that for the relationship building, but I also knew that operationally, we could use some project management changes. We could use some ticketing system management and workflow management and optimization, and also assignment of people to particular things. So I did have departmental changes in my first 30 days because I knew that. I knew the immediate impact. And I also felt that the sooner these changes would get made, the better off the team would be, and the more rapport and respect that I would actually gain from the team as a whole. Because I mentioned generally in the first 30 days, you're trying to learn where individuals are at, what their motivators are, and all these things. And I already knew this information, and I could accomplish some of these things to make the team members happy immediately in the first 30 days. So when you are internal, leverage your advantage. Leverage the fact that you can make change sooner because you have more insight. That's why I say you can probably do the SWOT analysis going into the development of this 30, 60, 90-day plan, is you can use all of that internal knowledge you've gained over your tenure. Now, if you are internal and maybe you're having an opportunity 6 months into your employment, then again, you're pretty much just a slightly advanced external person in this regard. But if you've been there a couple years, leverage everything you know and leverage the relationships that you have. Leverage your ability going into that interview and plan development to interview your other stakeholders and interview your cross departments and say, hey, how could my department or my team or whatever affect your operation or your team in a better way? Take the advantage of the internal people, because I almost promise you that you are also going to go up against external candidates for these particular roles. So you coming in with that advantage, use it every single chance you get. So to sum up here, the variety of common scenarios for 30, 60, 90-day plans. So your first 30 days is all about learning, building relationships, getting an understanding. 31 through 60 is where you're beginning to contribute, stack some small wins around departmental changes, maybe some process improvements or completing some assignments, so on and so forth. 61 to 90 is where you're really beginning to make a bigger impact. You're beginning to build a plan for the long term and coming out with some longer term initiatives, suggestions, and innovation. As a bonus, do a 90-day plus plan where you are beginning to build upon that first 90 days of success with even larger impacts of initiatives, more presentations, more innovations, more departmental relationship building, etc. Second, when it comes to the format and presentation, there is no wrong answer. You can do very verbose documents. You can do very summarized documents. You can do visual presentations. It's really about your audience. If you don't know, ask. And if you do know, then leverage that. And if you have multiple types of audience to cater to, it doesn't hurt to produce this in multiple formats and provide it, whether you are internal or external, ahead of time. Each phase, so it doesn't matter which one we're talking about, should have some level of measurable goals and SMART goals within that. Again, SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. The time bound is already taken care of by the name of the plan, 30, 60, 90. So you're good there. Specific, get down to the nitty gritty of your actions. I will do one-on-ones with every team member every week and document those. There's your measurement. Did you do it? Did it not? Is it achievable? A is always the easiest one. And then relevance. I break this down into team impact, customer impact, and business impact. Lastly, as a bonus, whether that this goes after the 90 days, before the first 90-day plan, or during the 90-day plan, do a SWOT analysis. Strengths: what is working well internally? Weaknesses: what is not working well internally? Opportunities: what is not being taken advantage of from an external standpoint? Market penetration, marketing strategies, sales strategies. Threats: what are the external threats to our organization? Competitors, regulation, etc. That, my friends, is how you build a 30, 60, 90-day plan, how you go about it, and what to expect. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If you have additional strategies to add to this discussion, leave it in the comments below. Anything else, leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get every posting going forward. And until next time, thank you.